in just a moment.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And good morning. Your Niagara Frontier radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, May 18th. And your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. And we start off with, I guess we're calling it a Victory Monday. Now,
We hope so.
I'm not talking about the Sabres yet. You can talk about them in a second. I'm talking about the weather. This is the first day since October 6th that it's going to be above 80 degrees. So that's a victory for us. It's been a long time coming. So it's going to be a nice warm couple of days here. It'll be breezy and warmer today with a high of 85. Now, there might be a thunderstorm or two in the area tonight. The low tonight will be 69 degrees. Tomorrow, we're going to have some gusty thunderstorms that can bring localized damaging wind gusts. And the high tomorrow will again be in the 80s at 83. And Wednesday, once again, thunderstorms in spots with a high down to 61 only on Wednesday, and it'll get a little cooler for the rest of the week. Now, the normal high and low for today are 68 and 49. The record high was 87 degrees in 1949, and the record low 32 in 1983, and I don't think we've got a chance today of breaking that record low. Last year we had 70 degrees and 53 as our highs and our lows. Now, our question today, and this is kind of relevant to the thunderstorms for the next couple of days, what is the average height of a thunderstorm? And it comes in at 40,000 feet. So you can entertain your family and friends with that little trivia fact in the next couple of days.
Well, hopefully it'll stay at 40,000 feet and not rain on us.
I hope so,
Especially
yes.
tonight. We may be winners in the weather department, but we'll see if we're winners in the hockey department here, because tonight is Game 7. Two of the greatest words in sports, but not something that we're all that used to in these parts. The Buffalo Sabres and Montreal Canadiens are heading down Ultimate Showdown Road tonight in KeyBank Center, staging the climactic act of a 7-part drama filled with stops, starts, subplots, and questions that often don't have answers. Face-off is shortly after 7:30, with the teams tied at 3 wins apiece and looking for that ticket to play the long-idle Carolina Hurricanes in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final on Thursday. Sabres fans should revel in this game. Their club is coming off Saturday's 8-3 boat race past the Habs that quieted the Bell Center, and will be playing in just the third Game 7 at home for a franchise that dates to 1970. The goal is to make Game 7 like Game 6, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said Sunday in a heading home meeting with reporters in the team's Montreal headquarters, the Four Seasons Hotel. Move the puck quick, play with a lot of pace, keep our feet moving in the offensive zone, and close real quickly in the defensive zone. That's our recipe. Sure worked. That 3-1 Montreal lead went poof in the night as the Habs lost a potential series clinching game at home when leading by multiple goals for the first time in that franchise's long history. Now, both teams are going to need to be desperate, Sabres winger Alex Tuch said on Sunday. I'm really excited and really happy we're able to get Sabres fans a Game 7 here. So now, the Sabres get their chance at home. Somehow, through all these decades of Sabres hockey that includes 30 trips to the Stanley Cup playoffs, they have just one win in Game 7. That came in the opening round in 1997 when Derek Plant's overtime goal produced a 3-2 triumph over the Ottawa Senators. The other Game 7 in Buffalo gave us the opposite result, a 3-2 overtime win for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round of 2001, with Darius Kasparaitis shot sending Dominik Hasek off the ice in a Buffalo uniform for the last time destined to be traded to Detroit that summer. Overall, the Sabres are just 1-6 when playing in Game 7. There's lots of heartbreak there, like the injury-ravaged defense falling 4-2 at Carolina in the 2006 East Final. Think Brad Park's overtime goal in Boston Garden in 1983, or Dave Reed's bad angle shot past Tom Draper in the Garden in 1992. 2 nights after Hasek's 4-overtime 70-game shutout in 1994, Barten Brodeur outdueled the Dominator in posting a 2-1 victory in Game 7 in the Jersey Meadowlands. What's going to happen in this game? You can twist yourself so many different ways trying to figure out which pattern is significant. The goaltending matchup suddenly looks better for Buffalo than it has through the series, with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen coming off great relief in Game 6, and Montreal rookie Jacob Dobes suddenly looking a tad gassed and mortal. The Canadiens haven't lost 2 games in a row the entire playoffs, going 5-0 after losses. Do they stay hot? The Sabres are 5-1 on the road in the playoffs, but just 2-4 at home. Montreal is 5-2, 2-4, and blew Game 6 at home to both Tampa Bay and Buffalo with chances to close out a series. Carolina, which is going to have an NHL record wait of 12 days before the East Final begins, is 4-0 at home. The rest of the East is somehow only a combined 8-21. Ruff has ruled the distractions of home multiple times in this series, so the Sabres were heading into the bunker of a downtown hotel Sunday night and not planning a morning skate on Monday. Their media availability will be in the hotel and not in the arena. As Ruff joked after Saturday's game, they're trying to make it feel like they're still in the Bell Center, minus the massive noise chamber and the Hollywood-style special effects of the game-opening presentation. Crazy things happen in Game 7. Think back to St. Louis at Winnipeg in last year's first round, when the Blues frittered away a 3-1 lead in the final 156 of regulation by giving up the tying goal with 2.2 seconds left, and then lost on an Adam Lowry goal more than 36 minutes later near the close of the second overtime. Tuck admitted he still hasn't gotten over Vegas collapsing Game 7 at San Jose in 2019. The Golden Knights had a 3-0 lead before a controversial cross-check major penalty on future Sabre Cody Eakin created a 5-minute power play that saw the Sharks score 4 times to grab the lead. Vegas tied the game in the final minute, but San Jose won it in overtime.
Also on today's front page, thankless job. Fewer people are running for school boards. And this story is about how in Western New York, some districts have no one listed on their ballots for election. The same candidate is on the ballot in a half-dozen area school districts. In today's elections, blank. 6 of the 38 districts in Erie and Niagara counties don't have enough candidates running to fill the available school board seats, and will turn to write-in votes instead. 2, Cheektowaga Central and Lewiston Porter don't have anyone on their ballots. When you add in the 21 districts where there are the same number of candidates as board seats, about 70% of school board elections in the region are non-competitive this year. Just 11 school districts in the 2 counties have contested board races. In terms of why we had nobody step forward, I couldn't tell you. We've always had interest, Newport Superintendent Paul Casseri said, noting this is the first time in his 21 years with the district that the board ballot lines are empty. Area school leaders point to some possible reasons why there wasn't a lot of interest in running for the school boards this year. The required time commitment for the school board members who aren't paid for their efforts can make the job unattractive. Districts are facing financial constraints, and serving on a board is less appealing when members must make unpopular decisions about programs and job cuts. Board members are subjected to occasional, or more than occasional, criticism on social media platforms. Or residents may be content with how their schools are operating and therefore less motivated to run to try to change how their district runs. And some officials said it is part of the wider trend of declining participation in many community institutions, from fire companies to fraternal associations. I don't think people want to volunteer as much as they did in the past. You see that across the board, not only in the school district, but a lot of organizations around the area. Sometimes volunteering can be a commitment, and people really don't want to commit to that kind of responsibility, said Kevin Klump, Newfane's coordinator of business operation. District leaders say school boards play a valued role in school operations, representing the interests of their communities. They say they do what they can to let residents know about the opportunity to serve, and the picture in any particular district can change from year to year. West Seneca, for example, didn't have enough school board candidates in the 2025 election, but this year has 5 candidates for 3 seats. The situation we had 1 year ago is really different than where we are today, said West Seneca Superintendent Lisa Kruger. The school board is one of the oldest forms of democratic government in this country, and it is the ground level elected office in most communities. Nationwide, voters directly elect around 50,000 school board members in 13,000 school districts, according to the National School Boards Association. A Brown University study of 50,000 school board races in 16 states, including New York, between 2002 and 2017, found that nearly half went uncontested. Locally, 27 of 38 school board elections in Erie and Niagara counties on Tuesday are not contested. 6 of the 27 districts didn't have enough interest to fill the seats on the ballot. They are Cheektowaga Central with no candidate for 1 seat, Lew-Port, no candidates for 2 seats, Howland, 1 for 2 seats, Springfield Griffith, 1 for 3 seats, Royalton Heartland, 2 for 4 seats, and Starpoint, 2 for 3 seats. Whoever receives the most write-in votes will have the chance to serve on the school board. The write-in winners aren't obligated to accept these victories, of course. These write-in candidates must meet the same eligibility requirements, such as age and residency, as regular candidates for the school board. The top 2 write-in candidates who are viable candidates in the district will get offered the other 2 seats, Roy Hart Superintendent Jill Heck said. Applying Riley, Mickey Mouse does not qualify. Voters in these districts may not end up picking names at random, school leaders said. People have sent me some screenshots of Facebook posts and things like that, where there are at least 3, maybe even more than that are actually mounting social media campaigns, Lew-Port's Kasseri said. How did these districts end up without enough school board candidates? David Lowry, the executive director of the Erie County Association of School Boards, said people aren't serving extended tenures of 20 or more years as some members have in the past. This leaves more seats open when school incumbents choose not to run for real election. For example, Heck said one Roy Hart seat is open because a long-serving member whose 9 years on the board followed a career teaching in the district, opted to step down and enjoy retired life. She put in her time. She deserves it, the superintendent said.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is 15 minutes past the hour, and time now to turn to today's editorial page. And today's editorial's headline, Pride and Sadness, and it refers to the passing of Michael Tilson Thomas. Buffalonians experienced a deep chord of sadness when the news of Michael Tilson Thomas' death came last month. Those lucky enough to see the young maestro conducting the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra during his 1971 through 79 reign as music director were consoled by their vivid memories. Though his BPO tenure ended almost 50 years ago, Tilson Thomas returned to Buffalo several times in guest appearances with the orchestra, and local residents have watched with pride as he went on to lead other major orchestras to considerable acclaim. Tilson Thomas served as the principal guest conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic from 1981 through 85, principal conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra from 1988 through 95, and finally led the San Francisco Orchestra from 1995 through 2020. Among many ambitious projects, Tilson Thomas developed the San Francisco Orchestra into a Mahler powerhouse, producing Grammy-winning recordings of all 9 symphonies as well as orchestral songs. It should be noted that Tilson Thomas made 3 exceptional recordings with the BPO, including the works of St. Ives, Carl Ruggles, and a set of Gershwin show overtures that were used as the soundtrack for the Woody Allen film Manhattan. Tilson Thomas was not just a conductor, he was also a pianist and a distinguished composer, known for his song cycles, From the Diary of Anne Frank and Meditations on Rilke. Tilson Thomas' Buffalo stint may seem all but eclipsed by the cascading series of milestones and increasing international renown that followed, but the conductor's Buffalo innovations still resonate. His informal pre-concert talks were key to his approach. In a 1972 interview with former News classical music critic, the late Herman Trotter, the conductor was careful in defining what he was trying to do. At its broadest, what I really want to do is break down the formality between the stage and the audience. At its narrowest, the means I'll employ will be the talk about the music to be performed, blurring the edges between the talk and the concert, decompartmentalizing the experience. In 1975, publicly advocating for New York State arts funding, Tilson Thomas said, "The real question is the return of the experience of art to the people from which it has come. The general quality of the human soul in our society is in late, very bad state. In art," he said, "there is the truth, the rest, and simplicity which we associate with those things that are eternal." You might think that these words express the idealistic naivete of a 28-year-old artist. Naive or no, Tilson Thomas seldom seemed to exceed his grasp. News classical minute critic John Dwyer commented in 1972, "It is somewhat irritating that this conductor doesn't see manifest impossibility of what he's doing." There is a connection to be made here. Another BPO music director also made national news in April in a much happier context. Joanne Falletta was one of several music directors profiled in an April 14th New York Times report on how conductors form, or don't form, ties to the cities where their orchestras reside. It won't be news to Buffalonians that Falletta was solidly in the category of a music director with strong ties to her orchestra's home. People just come up to you and say, "Hi, Joanne," Falletta told New York Times classical music reporter Adam DeGurney. "They don't know me as maestro, they know me as Joanne." That's not the case with some globe-trotting conductors who, like Falletta, have commitments to more than one symphony orchestra, but unlike Falletta, have little time to spare for a true residency. In different ways, Tilson Thomas and Falletta made the relationship with their hometown audience a priority. Of course, Valletta has had much more time to familiarize herself, but when Tilson Thomas came on stage before a concert, dressed informally, and spoke, even joked about the music he loved, he was reaching out in a way that few other conductors had. Buffalo has been extraordinarily fortunate with his orchestra and the men and women who have led it.
We move now to another voice column, and today's letter is about the law, and it's submitted by Maurice Baggiano, J.D., a published legal author who is a member of the Supreme Court Bar. And the headline is, Louisiana's racial gerrymandering was legal and constitutional. In deciding Louisiana versus Calais, the Supreme Court on April 29 wrongly struck down the state's congressional map as unlawfully and racial gerrymandering. The logic the court used in doing so can be summed up as follows. Discrimination in favor of X is discrimination against Y. But the justices ignore the reality that racial gerrymandering helps to lawfully correct existing discrimination by the majority political party against minority voters in states that draw politically partisan voting districts. Section 1 of the 15th Amendment provides, quote, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude," end quote. Section 2 of the same amendment provides, quote, "The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation," end quote. As originally enacted by Congress in 1965, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act tracked the language of the 15th Amendment, providing that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This law's original intent was to undo racially discriminatory state voting right laws and practices nationwide. Accordingly, all state laws and practices, whether or not they are favored by the majority, which treats minorities unequally in the exercise of their voting rights, are prohibited as a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, as well as by the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which provides, in relevant part, quote, "No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws," end quote. In some states, racially gerrymandering voting districts help ensure that minorities are fairly represented in Congress. This undoes the discriminatory impact of partisan gerrymandering. Until the Supreme Court comes to this realization, I'm afraid its thinking will continue to be Orwellian. All voters and their votes are equal, but some voters and their votes may be more equal than others. Perhaps the justices should learn an often overlooked theme that runs throughout Plato's dialogues. Logic can help us to discover the truth, but it cannot create it.
Well, next we have today's editorial cartoon, and it comes from Mike Lukovich, who writes for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Mike Lukovich uses every opportunity he can to be critical of President Trump. He's no friend of the president. And in today's cartoon, we see on the left-hand side a angry President Trump with a very orangish-reddish face and brows furrowed, mouth open wide, shouting and so on. So he's very agitated and angry. And what he's shouting is, "Iran, open the Strait of Hormuz, or I'll do to you what I'm doing to America." Now, this is one of those cartoons, depending on where you stand in your politics, you can decide for yourself what President Trump is doing to America and what he is threatening to do to Iran.
Okay, now we head to the national opinion pieces. And the first one is by Llewellyn King. And its headline is Challenges Ahead for the Class of 26 Graduates. Dear graduates of 2026, welcome to the world where you will begin building careers and at times shaping history. It isn't the world of your parents. It isn't the world your college has taught you about. It begins anew daily. As Maya Angelou said, this is a wonderful day. I haven't seen this one before. There are three big forces looming on the horizon that will shape your world and that you will play a role in shaping. They are technology, specifically AI, politics, the harsher politics of today, and the environment, which is eventually everything. AI will have an effect that defies comprehension. It is so enormous. It is also evolving so fast that it keeps slipping out of your grasp. It is exponential, and human thinking is linear. So said one of the foremost thinkers about AI, Omar Hadamelsh, former head of AI at the NASA Goddard Space Center. He has written 5 books on AI. All that is absolutely, definitively, and incontrovertibly known as AI will affect everything. Graduates, you will come to realize that political action and speech have changed from what they were. Authoritarianism has taken root in America, and it will be hard to pull out. There has been an expansion of presidential power over areas constitutionally assigned to Congress, under the watch of an accommodating Supreme Court. There are troops on American streets, political searches and seizures, arrests and indictments, and deportations without due process. Who will put this evil genie of unconstitutional government back in its bottle? Domestic politics has also changed our relations to the world, a world where America, Canada, and Europe stood together, sharing a common view of law and savoring a shared peace in Europe, until Russian President Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine and set in motion 4 years of bloody fighting. Could we have done more? Yes, more weapons, more money, and less acceptance of Putin. We didn't. Free countries now know that America won't axiomatically have their backs. Internationally, the big open American hand has been closing as it has curtailed or ended participation in international institutions, from NATO to the World Health Organization to the Paris Climate Agreement. The arbitrary closing of U.S. aid was a declaration of withdrawal from the exercise of soft power as a diplomatic tool. Another challenge for future Americans: they may not live in a world where the climate is predictable as it once was. Already unpredictable weather is the norm, with hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and tinder dry regions. Politicians may deny that the climate is changing, but the evidence is there. Sea levels are rising, city streets are flooding, and beachfront homes are being swept away. Texas and the Southwest are facing prolonged droughts and water shortages that will curb future growth. We have left you a messy world, but it was always that way. Over 2.5 centuries, America has absorbed and changed. Along the way, it produced a society in which there still is opportunity and there is still freedom. Much has been perfected here. Remember, more people live better in the world today because of America, its ideas, its inventions, and its heart. Go forth and be that American.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 30 minutes past the hour, and our second column comes from Carl Lubsdorf, who writes for the Dallas Morning News. His headline is, "Victory appears increasingly elusive with Trump's war with Iran." Describing the situation with Iran, President Trump recently told ABC's Jonathan Karl, "We have it under control. One way or another, we win. And you know why, John? I always win." But as the United States and Iran struggle to maintain a shaky ceasefire and shadow box over the terms of a longer-term peace, it's far from clear that Trump is winning the gamble that he made in starting a war with Iran. At present, it looks at best to be a draw, but one in which Iran has fared better. And for Trump, a draw is akin to a defeat, with implications not only for the United States, but its allies in the Middle East and Europe. That's because while inflicting significant devastation on Iran's military and its economy, the United States has failed to achieve its primary goal of ensuring Iran won't ever have the capacity to develop nuclear weapons. It has failed to achieve its implied goal of forcing regime change in a country whose new leadership is, if anything, more resistant to change than the leaders who were killed in the initial U.S. attack. Unpopular at home, Trump's war has worsened U.S. relations with allies, caused gas prices to soar, and led Iran to block the Strait of Hormuz, precipitating a global energy crisis that has not previously existed. When Trump launched the attack on the night of February 28th, he outlined these goals. "We're going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground," he said in a video that remains the clearest explanation of U.S. goals. "We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces, and we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. They will never have a nuclear weapon." To be sure, some of that has happened. Iran's navy is shattered and its military has suffered grievous damage. Its terrorist allies like Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon have been damaged but not eliminated. As for its missiles, the Washington Post last week cited confidential CIA analysis that concluded Iran retains about 75% of its pre-war inventories of mobile launchers and about 70% of its pre-war stockpiles of missiles, a sharp contrast with Trump's assessment that they have probably 18 or 19%. Not only has Iran withstood the war's devastation, but it was able to shut down transit through the Strait of Hormuz, the international waterway through which 20 to 25% of the world's oil supply passes. Axios reported that the United States has proposed an agreement in which Iran would commit to a moratorium on nuclear enrichment for a period to be negotiated. The U.S. would lift its economic sanctions and release billions in frozen Iranian funds, and both sides would lift restrictions on transit through Hormuz. That outline sounds suspiciously like the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the agreement that the United States and its allies reached with Iran in 2015 during Barack Obama's presidency, a deal Trump revoked in 2018 and called a horrible, horrible, dangerous document. In any case, Trump called Iran's counterproposal a piece of garbage, leaving the two sides stalemated and Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz. Hardly sounds like much of a win.
We now go to some viewpoints, and this analysis by Michael Wilner from the Los Angeles Times is headlined, "Trump's Visit Bolsters Belief by China that America is in Decline." As President Trump left Beijing on Friday, Chinese social media resurfaced a familiar nickname for the president, Flattering at first glance, declaring that Chuan Zhuangguo, the nation builder, had returned. It is not meant as a compliment. The nation he is building, according to the Chinese, is not the United States, but their own, through a series of inadvertent yet costly mistakes inflicted by Trump at home and abroad. If the Chinese government was self-assured entering Trump's summit with Xi Jinping, the results of the state visit, in which Beijing refused to offer Trump any meaningful deals or concessions, signal their unmistakable confidence in American decline. Chinese government statements in local media stating as much made their way back to Trump as he was departing, aggravating the president, a U.S. official said. But the White House secured a clarification from the Chinese that seemed to placate Trump. America was only declining under President Biden, they said, not anymore. The Trump administration argues the trip was a success, having secured the display of conciliation and partnership the president has sought after years of increasingly dangerous acrimony. Foreign policy hawks on China will be displeased with his new direction of friendship and cooperation with a government they view as openly hostile to the United States. But Trump seems to have reached a similar conclusion as past administrations, that China might require a relationship of pursuit of, as she put it, constructive, strategic stability. Trump was notably out of character throughout his stay here, deferential to his host, marveling at displays of Chinese power and reticent to speak with the press. 5 times over 2 days, Trump referred to Xi as his friend, taking every public opportunity to offer his compliments and pats on the back. None of it was reciprocated. The Chinese leader, Trump told Fox News in an interview, was all business, in private as well, apparently uninterested in his overtures of personal goodwill. The summit may ultimately be remembered as the moment when Trump recognized a shifting power dynamic, where an American president had the rare and uncomfortable experience of entering a meeting clearly overmatched. I think the most important thing is relationship, Trump said in an interview, describing the summit as historic. It's all about relationship, he added. I have a very good relationship with President Xi. Little of substance was accomplished over the 2 days of talks, but Chinese officials expected no less after warning Trump's team before the summit that its minimal preparation had failed to lay the groundwork for any diplomatic agreements. Still, the lack of breakthroughs may come as a relief to some in Washington. Trump appears to have held to a long-standing U.S. line on Taiwan, for now refusing to provide Xi with a clarity on whether the United States would defend the self-ruled island if China would try to reclaim it by force. The two men discussed the matter the whole night, Trump told Fox. If China attacked, they would be met harshly and bad things will happen, Trump said. Yet, within that same answer, he questioned Taiwan's odds against China if war to break out, even with the U.S.'s help, noting its proximity to the Chinese mainland and its vast distance from the United States. Whether Trump will proceed with arms sales to Taiwan, passed by Congress and obligated by law under the Taiwan Relations Act, is still an open question. If you kept it the way it is, I think China is going to be okay with that, Trump said, referencing an ambiguous status quo around Taiwan's status. But we're not looking to have somebody say, let's go independent, because the United States is backing us.
Well, our next story in national news is headline Cost of Living Weighs on Latinos as Discontent Grows. As she walks out of a Latino supermarket in New York, Esmeralda Raustad shakes her head in frustration. There's almost $20 in here and basically nothing, said the 60-year-old Dominican mother and grandmother while holding a small bag containing just 2 orange juices and a lunch of chicken and green bananas. If you go grocery shopping, food is expensive, and don't even get me started on housing. You can't afford an apartment because they're extremely expensive, Raustad said. Raustad has 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren in the Dominican Republic. She works as a home health aide and regularly sends part of her paycheck back to her family on the island. But amid rising food, rent, and transportation costs, she says it has become harder to help her loved ones while also supporting herself. No matter how much you try to stretch your money, you just can't anymore because it's not enough, Raustad said. Like her, more and more Latinos say they feel overwhelmed by the cost of living in the United States, even as some economic indicators continue to show resilience. But for many in this community, financial pressure is not measured in charts or statistics. It's measured in grocery bags that feel lighter every day, in rent that keeps climbing even when wages do not, and in canceled outings and family plans. Every month I have to check on whether I can afford to eat out or whether I have enough to pay the rent, said Juan Galvan, a young college student in New York. I have to adjust when I can go out with friends and basically stay inside to justify all the money being spent on my apartment. The concerns expressed by Latinos in New York are not isolated. A new CNN poll shows the cost of living and inflation remain Americans' top concerns ahead of the midterms. A survey shows that 70% disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy, while more than 7 in 10 disapprove of his handling of inflation and gas prices. Michael Negron, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress and former White House economic advisor under President Joe Biden, says inflation tends to disproportionately hit the Latino community because a large share of their income goes towards basic necessities. Latinos are being particularly affected by the inflation we're seeing, Negron said. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Hispanics spend a larger share of their budget on food, nearly 15%, and around 8% on energy costs, well above the national average.
We now look at the business of sports, and this is the last chance to grab a stadium collectible. Pieces of the Bills' longtime home are up for sale after harvesting. The demolition of Highmark Stadium has begun, and that has brought an end to the extraction of collectibles from inside the building. But before the demo work started in the old stadium last week, Brandon Steiner needed to finish having his crew take out the last of the memorabilia that he will put up for sale to fans wanting a piece of the Orchard Park Stadium where the Bills played for the last 53 years. Collectible exchange expected to be done harvesting stadium items by the end of April, so there was a level of urgency to get everything wrapped up as May began and heavy equipment started rolling in to start the task of breaking down the huge building. Steiner's crew worked feverishly to remove the final seats and bleachers, while the turf was the last stadium keepsake to come out. He has already begun shipping some of the items and has been hosting item pickups since late April in the parking areas around the stadium that are now being used for storage. I think we got most of everything we wanted, Steiner said. Sales have gone so well that Steiner projects the effort could result in around $1.5 million going to Erie County. Steiner's company was retained by the Bills and the county to salvage any stadium elements that had resale value. They will split the proceeds, which Steiner originally thought would bring about $1 million to Erie County. Steiner said the deadline to finish came up a little quicker than he was anticipating, but he understands the need to hurry with the new more than $2 billion stadium across the street getting closer to completion. The reckoning for the old stadium began in February when Collectible Exchange began removing regular and oversized signs and the stadium's goalposts and ripping seats and bleacher benches from the concrete. The turf and other items around the stadium followed. Right after the Bills played their final game at the stadium on January 4th. But weather conditions over the past 3 months have made the harvesting of items a challenge. At first there was cold and snow, which transitioned to a rainy, wet spring. It was also difficult to rip up some of the items in the old building. All of these stadiums can be tricky, but I think this one was a little more difficult because of dealing with the weather, Steiner said. Steiner is close to selling out his stock of seats, which he said would be the first time that has ever happened at a stadium that he has torn apart for collectibles, though there were fewer seats in Highmark Stadium because many of the sections had bleacher seats. He said the company expects to sell between 6,000 and 9,000 standard seats, and they're going for $550 and up. Goalpost products are already sold out, and seat backs, which are going for about $100, are almost gone.
Well, in medical news, the headline is Platelets that are shelf-stable seen as a game changer. Researchers are getting closer to ensuring a vial of powder the size of a quarter and with the potential to prevent tens of thousands of unintentional deaths per year from bleeding is a staple in ambulances, first aid kits, airlift helicopters, and military packs. That small vial of powder, when combined with 10 milliliters of sterile water, creates artificial blood platelets that can clot blood and stop uncontrollable bleeding. It can be stored at room temperature and is shelf-stable for up to a year. It's the first time scientists have successfully created a shelf-stable artificial platelet product. I take care of people who are severely injured and maybe bleeding to death, and I can tell you that one of the most frustrating things about my job are the patients I never get to care for, said Matthew Neal, a trauma surgeon with UPMC and leading author on a new paper showing the viability of these synthetic platelets published in March in the Journal of Thrombosis and Homeostasis. They're the people who suffer from severe injuries where we may have tools and resources in a hospital to take care of them, but because of the severity of their injury, they can't actually get to the hospital. The synthetic platelets called Synthoplate were developed in collaboration with Case Western Reserve University and biotech company Halma Therapeutics, both based in Cleveland. Researchers tested Synthoplate on rats and found the product stopped hemorrhagic bleeding and helped the rodents recover significantly better than uninjured rats. Researchers said artificial platelets may be the holy grail for a long-held problem in the field of trauma, hemorrhagic bleeding, which kills 30,000 people a year. The project was supported with $4.6 million in grant money from the Department of Defense. Human blood breaks down into three parts. Red blood cells provide oxygen to our organs, plasma carries nutrients and helps blood flow as a liquid, and platelets provide the glue that helps blood clot. These blood components are often in shortage across the country. In January, for instance, the American Red Cross reported a shortage of both whole blood and platelet stock. Synthetic blood products are one way that scientists are working to skirt these donor shortages.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need any further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. And we don't have any death listings or obituaries in today's paper, but on the normal page, there's an article about the top 10 Pop-Tart flavors of all time. Number 3 fits the bill. It's Gone Nutty Peanut Butter, which has been retired. Around 2016, a Pop-Tart existed that featured a peanut butter cookie shell around a smooth peanut butter filling. Had no frosting. It tasted on the outside like a snickerdoodle and inside like a Skippy. If one pastry could be resurrected from the Pop-Tart graveyard, it would be this sweet and salty showstopper. No question. That's our humor and our death listing for the day.
Well, may it rest in peace.
A big piece. If you need any further information, call us at 716-821-5555. 716-821-5555.
Well, time now to turn to Georgia Nichols Royal Stars. And if your birthday is today, happy birthday. You have a straightforward approach that cuts incisively to the heart of an issue. You're energetic, steadfast, and compassionate. This is a year of service, perhaps service to family. Now, the stars show what kind of a day you're going to have. 5 stars means a dynamic day. 4 stars is positive. 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And we'll start with Aries, which is having a 4-star day. Be aware of the restrictions of the moon alert. This is a chatty day for you. Grab every opportunity to schmooze with friends, neighbors, and relatives, and tonight you should relax. For us Taurians, we're having a 3-star day. We should be aware of the restrictions of the moon alert because the moon is in our money house today, tempting us to spend money. Tonight we should be busy. For Gemini, 4 stars. Today the moon is in your sign for most of the day. However, it's a moon alert all day. You're definitely tempted to shop for pretty things. Postpone this temptation until tomorrow. Tonight, check your belongings. For Cancer, 3 stars. Fair Venus moves into your sign today to stay for the next few weeks. While it's in your sign, you'll find it easy to be charming and diplomatic with everyone. And tonight, you win. Leo, 4 stars. Today, Mars moves to the top of your chart to stay for the next 6 weeks, arousing your ambition as never before. But tonight, enjoy privacy. For Virgo, 3 stars. Your high vis today. People notice you, and some know personal details about your private life. But tonight, be friendly. For Libra, this is the perfect day to do something different. Explore your own city, take a drive in the country, learn something new, and meet people from different backgrounds. Tonight, you're admired. For Scorpio, 3 stars. Check the moon alert today because the moon is in one of your money houses. Avoid important decisions, and tonight, explore and learn. For Sagittarius, 3 stars. Today, you might have to go more than halfway when dealing with others, especially those who are closest to you. However, be aware of the restrictions of the moon alert. Tonight, check your finances. For Capricorn, 3 stars. This is a playful, fun-loving time for you, especially for athletics and competitive sports. Today, however, the moon alert might affect your work. Tonight, cooperate. For Aquarius, 4 stars. In the next few months, your home scene will become more chaotic due to visiting guests, renovations, redecorating projects, or residential moves. So tonight, you should work. And for Pisces, 3 stars, this is a quiet, gentler day. Home repairs and family discussions might take place. Nevertheless, relax if you can. The word for tonight is socialized. And Ted, I want to know what this moon alert is.
I don't know.
I mean, several of us have a moon alert. I guess I'll have to Google it and find out what that is.
Wait and see if we get an alert on our phones. So what's happened in history on May 18th? In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was chosen on the 3rd ballot of the Republican National Convention in Chicago to be the party's nominee for president. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled 7-1 in Plessy versus Ferguson that segregation laws with accommodations that were separate but equal were constitutional. That ruling was overturned exactly 58 years later. In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson signed the Selective Service Act to build the American Armed Forces through conscription to aid the Allies during World War I. 1933, as part of President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, Congress created the Tennessee Valley Authority as utility and regional economic development agency. 1953, piloting a borrowed Canada Air F-86 jet, trailblazing aviator Jacqueline Cochran added to her list of records and firsts by becoming the first woman to break the sound barrier. In 1969, Apollo 10 launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on its mission to orbit the moon as a dress rehearsal for the moon landing during the Apollo 11 mission. And in 1980, after nearly 2 months of activity, Mount St. Helens erupted in southern Washington. The eruption killed 57 people, destroyed or damaged 200 homes, and deposited ash across 11 states.
Well, in political news, Senator Cassidy has lost his Republican primary. Two-term Republican U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy lost his bid for re-election in Louisiana's primary on Saturday as Trump-backed challenger Julia Letlow and State Treasurer John Fleming advanced to a June runoff to choose the party's nominee after a closely fought three-way battle. Cassidy, a physician who first earned the president's ire by voting for his conviction in Trump's second Senate impeachment trial in 2021, was projected to finish in third place in a political victory for Trump's retribution campaign that recently unseated several Republican senators in Indiana who defied his push for state congressional redistricting. Cassidy is the first U.S. elected senator to lose renomination since 2012. Letlow, who won Trump's Senate endorsement before she had even announced her candidacy, led Fleming 45.2 to 28.3, with 98% of the votes counted, the Associated Press reported.
You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for May 18th on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and we'll return for some more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ted Jackie.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we turn now to the city and regional section of the paper, and our first headline is, Will Buffalo get even more help from Albany? Lawmakers press their cases. Expected increase, how much if any, in state aid for Buffalo and other upstate cities remain a mystery as Governor Kathy Hochul and top lawmakers continue to negotiate a state budget now more than 6 weeks late. On Tuesday, Hochul and first-year New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani announced an increase of $4 billion for the nation's largest city, raising the state's financial assistance to New York City to nearly $8 billion over the next 2 years. In western New York, Buffalo is expected to receive an increase in aid of at least $40 million, but it remains an open question whether any more aid is on the way. I'd say we're helping every major city in terms of trying to help them close their deficits, but I'd say it's still open because we're still trying to make sure that we can get them, we want to help them into the future, not just this year, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Democrat of Bronx, told reporters in the state capitol on Thursday. I don't have a final amount on what the city is getting. Heastie, Hochul, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, a Democrat of Yonkers, the three most powerful officials in state government, have been negotiating the terms of a budget that was due on April 1st. Hochul and the Senate have planned to allocate at least $40 million to Buffalo to bring its state aid to at least $206.3 million. Hastie's proposed increase of $56.8 million would bring total aid for Buffalo to more than $223 million. We're continuing to push for the additional aid the Assembly plan seeks beyond the $40 million that all sides have agreed on, Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, a Democrat of Buffalo, said in a statement. We're trying to find creative ways that can be helpful to the city of Buffalo. Obvious Senate Deputy Majority Leader Michael Gianaris, a Democrat of Queens, could not pinpoint an amount for Buffalo and other upstate cities following the announcement of increased aid for New York City. Obviously, New York City is our largest city. It has great need. We're trying to be responsive to them, Gianaris said. But our members who represent Buffalo and Rochester, Syracuse, have concerns as well, not to mention Binghamton. So we're trying to be responsive to the concerns of our members that they bring to us from those regions of the state. Asked if he expected an increase in money for Buffalo from the Senate plan, Gianaris said, I hope so, yeah. State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli recently released an analysis that found the city of Buffalo to have a general fund deficit of $103 million in the 2026-27 fiscal years, slightly under Mayor Sean Ryan's estimate of $109 million. On Friday, Ryan had no updates on the city's level of aid in the state budget. Jillian Casmore, a spokesperson for State Senator Jeremy Zellner, a Democrat of Tonawanda, said the senator was confident Buffalo would get at least the $40 million increase in state aid. The senator continues working alongside his colleagues to secure as much support for the city of Buffalo as possible to help ease pressure on local taxpayers and ensure the city has the resources needed to continue providing critical services, the spokesperson said. We'll have more clarity once final agreement is reached. State Senate Minority Leader Robert Ortt, Republican of North Tonawanda, said he had real concerns about the aid for New York City, which he described as a politically motivated bailout by Hochul for Mamdani rather than the city. When she does that, it begs the question, what about Buffalo? What about Rochester? What about Syracuse? Ortt told reporters. I would say, what about Lockport? What about Medina? What about cities that will never get a bailout or even be considered for a bailout that my colleagues couldn't find on a map if they had to? There's a lot of places that are stressed, so how long can the state bail out cities and prevent them from making hard decisions they have to make? Ortt said that as mayor of North Tonawanda, he had to make tough decisions, including layoffs, while facing a deficit. I just worry that these cities are going to have to make hard decisions and right-size their budgets and make smarter investments and have that dialogue with their constituents rather than just go to the state of New York. But in light of the governor doing it from Mamdani, you can't blame these mayors from Rochester, Buffalo for saying, "Where's mine? I want the same thing."
Also in local news, county clerk and legislators wrangle over the new DMV office. Erie County Clerk Mickey Kearns wants to move the current auto bureau in town of Tonowanda's Sheridan Plaza to a vacant and much larger former Rite Aid drugstore less than 2 miles west on Sheridan Drive. Kearns also wants to make use of the building's existing pharmacy drive-through window for simple transactions, which would be a first for the state, he said. Thousands of people make use of the county's Sheridan Plaza auto location to renew their driver's license, register a car, turn in plates, or anything else required of drivers by the state's Department of Motor Vehicles. But at a cost of an additional $347,888 a year over what the county pays now for its current location, some members of the county legislature are balking at the $43.74 per square foot price, especially compared with the $22.16 per square foot price that the county currently pays. "I'm not trying to do this job for him," said Legislator John Barnese from the Tonowandas. "I'm only trying to save thousands of dollars for a move that's down the road to gain a drive-through? It's absurd." Kearns has been pushing for weeks for the county legislature to greenlight his proposal to move the county's auto bureau to the former Rite Aid building at 2047 Sheridan Drive. But legislators aren't in a hurry to move along. Aside from the issue of cost, several Democratic legislators have also raised questions about tight parking, potential drive-through backups, and a lack of transparency and politics. Kearns and his staff, meanwhile, have made many counterpoints, including that the added cost to overhaul the building for vehicle transactions is only a temporary expense, which will benefit the community and staff by having a larger facility. They also said the current Rochester-based landlord hasn't always been adequately responsive to the emergency maintenance and repair issues, including sewage, plumbing, and gas issues that have temporarily halted customer services while awaiting a repair contractor from the Rochester area. "This office was too small from the day we walked into it," said Madonna Bishop, deputy clerk for the county auto bureaus. "It's just a bad situation," she said. The chief concern raised by legislators is the cost. The proposed annual rent of $487,011 for the former Rite Aid building is more than 3.5 times what the current auto bureau lease cost, according to the news review of the numbers. "We're looking at a huge increase," said Legislator Tasha St. Jean Ritard from Buffalo, because the former Rite Aid store would need to be retrofitted to serve the Erie County Auto Bureau. Ellicott Development is rolling into the proposed lease agreement the cost associated with creating a customer service area, restrooms, cashier windows, and workstations that will require electrical rewiring and more. The way the new lease would be structured, renovation costs for the Rite Aid building would be built into the monthly rent for the building for the first 5 years, which is why the $43.79 square foot cost is high, Kearns said. He pointed out that if the county were to extend the lease for another 5 years, the square footage cost would drop to about $29 per square foot for an annual rent of $187,095. Meanwhile, the current landlord told Barnese that a 5-year lease extension for the current space would start at $25.48 per square foot, with a 2% annual increase added each year. That would result in an annual increase of less than $20,000 the first year, based on a news review. If the Auto Bureau needs more space, Barnese said, the current landlord says it does have more space that it could provide.
Well, next we have Alan Pergament's comment and his column, and his headline is Exits Put TV News Pay in the Spotlight. So, you want to be on local television news? You may be surprised by the salaries of anchors, meteorologists, reporters, and producers. New York is one of the states that require employees to list the salary ranges of job openings, and 2 recent high-profile departures open a window into the local salaries of news personnel. The recent departure of WGRZ-TV, that is Channel 2 meteorologist Jennifer Stanonis, has created an opening on its Storm Team 2 weather team. According to a job posting on Tegna, WGRZ's owner, the salary range for the opening for a Channel 2 meteorologist that requires 3 to 5 years of on-air experience and a degree in meteorology, geoscience, or atmospheric science is between $90,000 and $95,000 a year. The job isn't just about being on the air. The requirements also include being proficient at posting content to various websites and social media, computer literacy required, including weather and newsroom computer systems. The salary for someone with a special skill is at the very high end of current job postings in local news. Tegna, which is known for paying higher salaries than Nexstar, which is only one of the reasons that Channel 2 staffers are concerned about the Nexstar-Tegna merger that's been delayed by the courts. WIVB-TV Channel 4, a station owned by Nexstar, has a job posting for a multimedia journalist and an anchor. Presumably, it is for the opening for the recent departure of Jordan Dorcas, who co-anchored the 4 p.m. newscast on Channel 4 and anchored the 7 p.m. newscast on sister station WNLO, that is the CW23. The lengthy list of requirements includes having a bachelor's degree in communications and journalism or a related field and 3 years of anchoring or reporting. The salary range for the multimedia journalist anchor is $60,000 to $65,000 a year, although stations can pay higher salaries than listed. Of course, veteran anchors and the most important newscasts have much higher salaries, though recently I've been told of stagnant wages or even pay cuts. The salaries of younger, less experienced broadcast journalists often can make it difficult to pay for higher rents and their student loans, which can be substantial when you consider tuition at Syracuse University is more than $66,000 annually without financial aid. That makes the communications program at SUNY Buffalo State University a bargain at about $7,000 for in-state students. Channel 2 reporter Nate Benson recently responded to a post on an X forum from someone saying that the days of the reporter-editor who comes from the working class, middle class is over, and that everyone in media these days has some family money to help them stay afloat, wrote Benson. Journalists at the local level very often work second jobs, hustle side gigs to survive and pay the bills. I can assure you most of us are middle class and some aren't even that. To supplement their income, I've been told local broadcast journalists have worked at restaurants, grocery stores, as camera operators for sports events, and in one case, even operated a travel agency. WIVB also lists openings for reporters and news producers. The salary range is $40,000 to $45,000, with reporters needing a minimum of 2 years of experience. Minimum wage in Western New York is $16 an hour, and that would be $640 for a 40-hour work week, or about $34,000 annually. Tegna also has listed openings for 2 news producers at Channel 2. One pays between $28.50 and $30 an hour, and the other pays between $23.07 and $24.02 an hour. Most of the salaries explain why Western New York has become a local news market where reporters and anchors without roots here get experience on Buffalo stations before moving on to larger markets where the salaries are higher or leave the business entirely.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. And now we turn to the sports section, and across the front page of the sports section in huge letters, it simply says, "Seeking Seventh Heaven." If home is where the heart is, it's time for the Sabres to prove it. And this is an article by Mike Harrington. This was a game that spent nearly 2 hours oscillating from delirium to disaster and then became a glorious blowout. As a result of a pulsating Game 6 beatdown that silenced the Bell Center and sent the Montreal masses to the streets of a quiet night, you can raise your beer sabers again in the KeyBank Center. The Buffalo Sabres are coming home for Game 7. In one of the most stunning reversals in franchise history, the Sabres fell behind 3-1 in the first 10.5 minutes, then scored 7 straight goals with their season on the line on Saturday night. For everything that has happened to this team, both good and bad, in 12 games over 2 rounds, nothing else matters now. Game 7 is at 7:30 tonight in downtown Buffalo. The winner is off to meet the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final on Thursday night at Raleigh, North Carolina. It is going to be awesome. A new experience for a lot of guys. Something you dream of growing up, said Tage Thompson, who finally had a big impact in this series with a 4-point night. If you asked every guy in September about Game 7 of the second round, we all would have signed up for it immediately. Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman dropped a memorable nugget late Friday night on the network's Powerhouse 32 Thoughts podcast when he asked what he thought Saturday would be like. Said Freeman, "It's going to be banana pants." Boy, he was right. The whole series feels that way. The home team is just 2-4 in this series. The Habs have outscored Buffalo 24-21, and it's the first National Hockey League playoff series to see all 4 goalies used without injury since 2012, as Buffalo's Alex Lyon and Montreal rookie Jacob Dobish got richly deserved hooks on Saturday night. If it seemed like a game you've never seen before to this extreme, there was a reason. According to OptaStats, the Sabres became the first team in National Hockey League history to be down by multiple goals on the road in a playoff game, but ended up winning by 5+ goals. Game 6 felt like the complete opposite of Game 5, when the Sabres had a 3-2 lead after the first 10.5 minutes, but didn't score again in losing 6-3. The Sabres dominated this one all over the ice, and outshooting the Canadiens 36-21. Lyon had an abominable start, getting yanked after giving up 3 goals on 4 shots. But Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen pitched a 17-save shutout to end any discussion about who's starting in Game 7. Rasmus Dahlin tied the franchise playoff record with 5 points, and Thompson also came up big with a 4-point night. Jack Quinn had his first 2 career playoff goals, and Zach Metza capped his first career playoff game with a postseason goal to close the scoring. Dahlin, who scored 32 seconds into this game on a sublime backhand tight on Dobish, tied the club record for points in a playoff game. He tied the club playoff mark with 4 assists, joining Gilles Perreault and Dave Andreychuk. And get this, Dahlin became the first defenseman in National Hockey League history to ring up 5 points in a game when facing elimination. The last skater to do that was Philadelphia center Sean Courtrier in 2018, less than 2 months before the Sabres made Dahlin the league's #1 overall draft pick.
Well, continuing on now with the Sabres, we turn to Rachel Lindsay's column, which is headlined, "Back in Buffalo, this dream team awaits the winner-take-all finale." Jason Zucker and so many of his teammates have dreamed of this scenario. They've acted it out with mini sticks and spongy home pucks in their living rooms. They've recreated some of those iconic winner-take-all moments with a plastic ball and an old Sherwood dug up from a corner of the garage in their driveways and cul-de-sacs and backyards across North America and Europe. Some of them have even experienced it, for better or worse, when an entire series is on the line for two teams. Game 7. Game 7. Those two words are probably the greatest and likely the most daunting words in professional sports. For some, it's the dream come true, playing for the right to continue your postseason life. The Sabres now live that dream and the outcome it could bring. The Sabres host the Canadiens at 7:30 tonight in Game 7 of the second-round series at KeyBank Center, tied 3-3. The winner advances to the Eastern Conference Final against the Carolina Hurricanes, with Game 1 scheduled for Thursday at the Lenovo Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. The loser? They pack up their equipment and say a begrudging hello to the off-season. "It's exciting," said Jack Quinn, whose 2 power play goals helped the Sabres to Game 7 in an 8-3 win in Game 6 on Saturday against Montreal at the Bell Center. "We've all thought about it growing up. We are excited for the challenge." Game 7 is another first in a season filled with firsts for the Sabres roster. The first franchise victory and playoff berth in 15 years, the first series win for the franchise since 2007, the first Game 7 for this group as a collective unit. "It's do or die," Sabres right wing Alex Tuch said. "We got a little taste of that the last game, but now both teams are going to need to be desperate. I'm really excited, really happy that we're able to give the Sabres fans a Game 7 here." Zucker's dream of playing in Game 7 may have been a little different from Quinn's or Tuch's. Zucker grew up in the Las Vegas area and thought of his days playing roller hockey, while Quinn grew up in the Ottawa area and Tuch in Baldwinsville near Syracuse. "But it's all kind of the same," Zucker said. Tuch has played in 3 Game 7s in Stanley Cup playoffs in his 10-year professional career and takes a basic tenet into Monday: outwork and outcompete your opponent, because by Game 7, both teams are in the same spot in a 1-game playoff. "It's hard to explain," Tuch said. "Everyone's going to have nerves. Everyone's sitting in the same spot. If you're not nervous, you're not human. It's exciting. It's the reason why we play the game of hockey. It's what we thought of in street hockey, playing in the backyard. And the thing you dream of and how to do it in the playoffs, for me, to do it at the KeyBank Center, it's a dream come true." Sabres coach Lindy Ruff thinks back to his last Game 7 when he coached the New Jersey Devils to a 4-1 win against the New York Rangers in a decisive game of first-round series in 2023. "We took a similar approach as I did to Game 6 here, where we kept them away from the rink and just brought them in just in time for the game," Ruff said. "Everybody realizes that you feel the pressure. We feel it, and you got to imagine how they feel. We've got a great number of players that have never experienced it. Our group has gotten to the point where I believe this is just another opportunity for our group and prove who we can be."
Well, beyond Sabres fever, things are heating up at the Bills playing place as the rookies had their camp and OTAs will be starting this week. And this article by Lance Laskowski talks about an interesting person who's a rookie for the Bills. The headline is, "Bills rookie fullback Jackson Acker found inspiration in watching Reggie Gilliam." As each game approached late last season, Wisconsin's offensive coaches gathered in a meeting room to try to answer the same question about their next opponent. How would the defense react if the Badgers had Jackson Acker on the field? Acker wasn't the starting running back or the number one wide receiver. But the Bills signed Acre following the NFL draft because he's a 6'1", 247-pound fullback who had the speed to rush for 322 yards as a sophomore, the strength to block defensive ends, and the athleticism to play tight end. Wisconsin coach Luke Fickell labeled Acre as one of the more versatile players in college football. Acre wasn't the player opponents game plan to stop each week, but his presence on the field often dictated which plays were called against the Badgers. As we started studying teams, we were trying to forecast what in this package are we going to get if we put Jackson on the field, Wisconsin tight end coach Nate Lutton told the News. We found creative ways to cut the defense in half, then give Jackson the ball. I know he was an undrafted free agent, and I know part of that was maybe he didn't have like a true home over his career, but I have no question about the impact he's going to have. I think you're going to love him in Buffalo. I'm certain he's going to make the team because he works his ass off. He's what you're looking for in a football player. The Bills were among NFL teams expressing interest in Acre during the weeks leading up to the draft. Acre didn't know much about the Bills' depth chart. Two of his former college coaches, Bills defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard and outside linebacker coach Bobby April III, were in Madison at the same time as Acre. Leonhard was the Badgers' interim head coach in 2022, when Acre's move to fullback led to his favorite year of football. Acre began to research the Bills and learned about the former starting fullback Reggie Gilliam joining the New England Patriots as a free agent this past summer. The landing spot was intriguing, a Super Bowl contender with a hole at fullback. Friends encouraged Acre to watch videos of Gilliam to see if the offense would be a fit. Gilliam's role in Buffalo was like the one Acre filled during his 2 seasons that he made an impact in Wisconsin. Both lined up at fullback and tight end while contributing on special teams. In 2025, Gilliam played a career-high 235 offensive snaps while blocking for the NFL's rushing champion, James Cook. The Bills were one of 8 teams to have a player lined up as fullback on more than 150 snaps last year. I think I can fill that role, whether it be this year or in a year or 2, Acre told the News. I'm confident that's something I could do and excel at. Honestly, what excited me was I saw myself in his shoes. He reminded me of me. And that gave me a lot of hope, inspiration, and confidence going into this opportunity.
Well, next we have some baseball news, and the headline here is Wheeler rises to the occasion. Outduels Skenes as the Phillies sweep the series with the Pirates. Zach Wheeler tossed 7 shutout innings to outduel Paul Skenes as the visiting Philadelphia Phillies completed a 3-game sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates with a 6-0 victory on Sunday. Wheeler gave up just 3 singles and a double with a walk and 8 strikeouts while lowering his ERA to 1.99 in 5 starts. Bryce Harper and Bryson Stott hit home runs for the Phillies, who are on a 4-game win streak and moved to 24-23 after they were 9-19 when Don Mattingly replaced Rob Thompson as manager late last month. Skenes allowed 5 earned runs, his most since opening day in 5+ innings. He yielded 6 hits and a walk with 7 strikeouts. Wheeler retired 12 of the 13 batters he faced in the first 4 innings, allowing only an infield single to rookie Connor Griffin in the 2nd inning. He gave up a single and a walk in the 5th, but benefited from JT Realmuto throwing out Griffin, attempting a steal at second. In Texas, the Texas Rangers shortstop Corey Seager was out of the lineup again on Sunday. He was sent to get an MRI exam for his ailing back. Seager's back prevented him from playing in Saturday's loss against the Houston Astros. He's hitting just .179 this season. And speaking of the Astros, Houston second base Jose Altuve was placed on the injured reserve list Sunday with a grade 2 left oblique strain. He's hitting .245 this season.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. And now we turn to our good friend Eric for some advice. The headline is, Stepson Done with Stepmom After Father's Death. Dear Eric, my parents divorced, and my father remarried more than 20 years ago. My wife, our children, and I would visit every year or two. The visits were cordial, but fairly superficial, so I did not have a strong relationship with my father nor his wife. My father passed away recently, and I have been dealing with his wife for the funeral arrangements as the executor of his estate. I do not like spending time with his wife because she is very controlling and judgmental. When all of these tasks are completed, I do not want to stay in touch with her. If she does contact me in the future, how do I tell her I do not want to get together? Or do I say something now? I don't want to be harsh, but I just do not want her in my life. And it's signed, Dunn being stepson. And Eric replies, Dear Dunn, I'm sorry for the loss of your father. Even though you weren't close, this period surely brings up a host of difficult emotions. It's for that reason that I wouldn't advise having a conversation about severing ties with your father's wife now. This doesn't seem like a subject that needs to be broached at this present moment and would likely cause unnecessary pain and conflict. Instead, if she reaches out in the future, you can set a clear boundary by declining her invitation. You should think about what kind of contact, if any, you'd be comfortable with. Are you okay with holiday cards? Can she call you if there's an emergency? Are you involved in some way in her end-of-life plan? Perhaps the answer to all of those questions is no, and that's fine. None of these are questions that have to be answered now, but thinking about them will help you get internal clarity about your feelings, and that clarity will help to set a better boundary. The next letter. Dear Eric, neither my husband nor I have any handyman skills. My husband has no interest in taking on Mr. Fix-It home repairs. We have sufficient income. However, whenever something relatively minor goes wrong, like a door lock needs replacing, toilet flushing mechanism sometimes doesn't work, ceiling fan needs replacing, my husband comes up with creative solutions that, quote unquote, fix the problem. You know, if you jiggle the toilet handle in a particular way, it's not a problem. Depending on the seriousness of the problem, we lurch along this way for a few hours, days, or weeks. Then I say, this isn't working. I'm calling a professional. All at this, he blows up and causes a scene. He gaslights me by telling me all is okay. I eventually call a professional while he is still protesting in the background. If a person can come soon to do the repair, he wants to put it off for a few days or weeks. When the repair person comes, my husband is on good behavior and is relieved once the repair has been done. What causes this high level of anxiety? And is there any way to avoid the unnecessary drama? It adds an extra layer of stress to a situation that I have to deal with on my own. We are retired. It's been going on for a few years. He was in therapy for many years and is unlikely to go back at his stage. His anxieties about other issues have lessened, but this is as strong as ever. Once he was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and I just went ahead and got a few repairs done without mentioning to him. He was so glad to see the results. It was much less stressful on him and on me. Thanks for your help. And it's signed, Mrs. Fixit. And Eric replies, Dear Mrs. Fixit, you have my sympathies. Not only do you have to fix household items when they break, but you're also being asked to fix your husband's moods about the fixing. It's not fair to you when this burden is hurting your marriage. Your husband is making you responsible for something that he should be managing on his own. Perhaps he feels his pride being dinged when someone else makes a repair that he can't. Perhaps there's something else happening. Either way, it's his job to look inside and to deal with it. What he's doing instead is creating emotional damage in your relationship where there needn't be any. Before the next blow-up, have a frank conversation with him about this cycle that you're in. Tell him that it's harmful to you and it's unnecessary. You might even show him this letter. Tell him that these are minor repairs, and yet his response is making them major issues. Ask him if he understands what you're saying, and ask him how he plans to address it on his own. Because, unlike the latch or the ceiling fan, this is something he can and must fix.
Well, now here's something different. The headline is Newsstand to Bandstand. Newspaper marches are among America's long musical traditions. In honor of the USA's 250th birthday, consider two specimens of Americana. One, the newsboy, the kid in knee pants and cloth cap yelling, "Extra, extra," did exist once. The other, the bandstand, the gazebo in the town square where folks would gather on a summer evening to hear music blaring, bicycle built for two, or a hot time in the old town tonight. Now, consider the institution that tunefully combines them both, the newspaper march. Once, newspapers had their own high-stepping theme songs. It wasn't just a few newspapers, it was scores of them, between 500 and 600, says musicologist George Foreman, a Lexington, Kentucky resident who has spent 40 years researching this curious musical niche. I have complete band arrangements for between 125 and 150 of them, side by side with approximately 400 piano scores, said Foreman, Director Emeritus of the University of Georgia Performing Arts Center. Even such relatively obscure compositions as the Newark Sunday Call March, the Boston Globe March, the Philadelphia Record March, the Joplin Globe March, and the Providence Journal March had eager interpreters. Foreman, a former managing director of the Norton Center for the Arts at Centre College, has a Ph.D. in musicology from the University of Kansas. And with the help of his wife, he's kept an eye out for undiscovered newspaper marches during his global research work. Much of his material ended up at the University of Michigan's newly established Center for American Band History Research. He's also working on a book. I'm still working on chasing down all newspaper march stuff, he said. A few of these newspaper marches were the work of important composers like John Philip Sousa, Frederick N. Innes, or Arthur Pryor. More often, they were the work of a local band leader or music teacher who might dedicate a march to their town newspaper in exchange for a nod or two in print. Some of the papers actually ended up publishing the piano arrangement, Foreman said. They would just print the music on a page of the newspaper, or they would be played at the town band concert. One was written by an editor. Ye Country Editor was a 1906 march and two-step by Ryan Rapp, then editor of the Pennsylvania Regalsville News. In my files, I have copies of what other papers wrote about it, Foreman said, sometimes humorously but always complimentary. there was a camaraderie amongst newspaper people. The newspaper march boom began with the Washington Post. It was an afterthought, part of a circulation stunt born of desperation. In 1889, the struggling 12-year-old newspaper sponsored a children's essay contest. The winning entries were to be read aloud on the Smithsonian grounds, and the U.S. Marine Band, conducted by Sousa, was to provide the music. Then, according to legend, Sousa happened to run into one of the newspaper's publishers, Frank Hatton, on the street. They just bumped into each other, Foreman said, and since the Marine Band was already scheduled to play for the event, in the course of the chat, Hattie said, "Why don't you write a march?" The Washington Post march was a hit that day. The band had to play it twice. Yet it might not have gone much further but for an event 4 years later. At an 1893 Dancing Masters Convention, Sousa's march seems to have been used to demonstrate a dance novelty. The instructors brought it back with them to teach their pupils, and it went viral, just like skyrocketed, Foreman said. Everywhere bands played the Washington Post march, people banged it out on pianos, and the sheet music sold and sold. Sousa's Washington Post march is second to the Stars and Stripes Forever, the most famous march in the world. You've heard it 1,000 times, even if you never knew it had anything to do with newspapers. People say, "Oh, I always thought it was about a fort or something," Foreman said. And just by way of interest, because I know you were about to ask, yes, the Buffalo News did have a Buffalo News march. And it was written in 1895 by composer and arranger J. Bodewalt Lampe. And Lampe was an influential ragtime and band music arranger. Written in 1895, it was written to celebrate the newspaper and often performed by the 74th Regiment Band of Buffalo, which after 1899 was housed in the Connecticut Street Armory.
Wow, fascinating. I didn't know that.
I tried to find out if there was a recording of it online here, but apparently there's not.
Well, that's your homework for next week.
Yeah, I'll play it on the
next
piano
week.
and bring in a recording.
Very good. In international news, Trump again ramps up pressure on Iran by saying the clock is ticking. The U.S. and Iran remain far apart on a deal to end weeks of war and reopen the crucial Strait of Hormuz on Sunday as a drone attack sparked a fire at a United Arab Emirates nuclear plant, spotlighting the risks of this fragile ceasefire. President Trump made clear his patience is wearing thin, posting on social media yesterday that for Iran, the clock is ticking, and they better get moving fast, or there won't be anything left of them. And then in all capital letters, time is of the essence. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency said the U.S. had set 5 main conditions for a peace deal, including the removal of uranium used by Iran's nuclear program to the U.S., that Washington pays none of the compensation Tehran has demanded and freezes less than a quarter of Iran's suspended assets. Fars didn't give a source for the information, and the U.S. hasn't publicly commented on such stipulations. Meanwhile, the semi-official Mehr news agency said Washington offered no tangible concessions while seeking to obtain concessions that it failed to obtain during the war, which will lead to an impasse in the negotiations. Yesterday's drone attack in the United Arab Emirates sparked a blaze in an electrical generator outside the inner perimeter of the Barakah power plant and had no impact on radiological safety, Abdul Dhabi's media office said in a statement. Authorities were working to extinguish the conflagration, which didn't cause any injury. The drone that hit the power plant was one of 3 fired from west of the emirate, the UAE Defense Ministry said in a social media post. The other 2 were intercepted. The UAE said it was investigating the source of the attack. Iranian threats on shipping in the Persian Gulf have brought the region's energy exports to a near standstill, sending global prices soaring and giving Tehran significant leverage in talks with the U.S. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran began February 28 and has claimed thousands of lives, mainly in the Islamic Republic. Retaliatory attacks by Tehran targeted U.S. allies across the Gulf, including the UAE, which has carried out intermittent strikes in Iran in response that Bloomberg has reported.
Well, next in national news, tax funding is in doubt, including the proposed White House ballroom. The Senate parliamentarian removes a provision from the massive spending bill. A U.S. Senate official removed security funding that could be used for President Donald Trump's planned White House ballroom from a massive spending package late Saturday, Democratic lawmakers said, imperiling Republican efforts to devote taxpayer money to the contentious project. The decision by the Senate's parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, deals a blow to Trump and his administration, which has sought the money for security purposes related to the ballroom. Trump said the construction of the ballroom would be funded by $400 million in private donations, but Senate Republicans are seeking $1 billion in taxpayer funding to the Secret Service for security upgrades to the ballroom and other structures being built beneath it. Democrats have criticized the ballroom as an expensive and frivolous diversion by Trump at a time when Americans facing rising costs such as fuel prices. Trump, a real estate developer turned politician, wrote on social media that it will be the finest building of its kind anywhere in the world. McDonough ruled that the security funding provision falls under chamber rules that require 60 votes to pass most legislation, according to the office of Senator Jeff Merkley, the top Democrat on the Senate Budget Committee. Republicans hold a 53-47 majority in the Senate. The parliamentarian interprets Senate rules, including whether legislative provisions are permitted. Republican senators could still revise the legislation to try again to get the parliamentarians' approval. Ryan Rass, spokesman for Senate Majority Leader John Thune, said in a social media post that Republicans would keep trying, redraft, refine, resubmit, he wrote on X. If Republicans do not succeed, they may be unable to include the ballroom-related funding in a $72 billion spending package they plan to bring to a vote on the Senate floor, with passage expected on a party-line vote with Democrats opposed. The bulk of the legislation is devoted to immigration enforcement. Republicans have been invoking complex budget rules to try to secure passage without Democratic support. While we expect Republicans to change this bill to appease Trump, Democrats are prepared to challenge any change to this bill, Merkley said in a statement. Democrats have opposed funding for Trump's signature immigration crackdown absent reforms that they've sought since federal immigration agents killed U.S. citizens in separate incidents in Minnesota in January. Republicans said federal funding for ballroom security is needed to ensure presidential safety, citing an April incident in which an alleged gunman is accused of storming a media gala in Washington that Trump attended. The administration has said the ballroom will modernize infrastructure, bolster security, and ease strain on the White House, which often uses temporary outdoor structures to host large events.
And we'll end our broadcast today with some news briefs from around the nation and the world. The first one, at least 4 are killed when Ukraine strikes Russia. At least 4 people were killed, including 3 in the Moscow region, after Ukraine launched its biggest overnight drone attack on the Russian capital in more than a year, local officials said yesterday. A 4th person was killed in the Belgorod region bordering northeastern Ukraine, local authorities said, while Russia's defense ministry said that by midday, more than 1,000 Ukrainian drones had been downed in the country in the past 24 hours. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, vowed retribution on Friday following Russia's heaviest drone and missile attack on Kiev over a 2-day period since the war started more than 4 years ago. Our next article is Mexico armed attack kills at least 10 people. 10 people, including a minor, were killed yesterday in an armed attack in Mexico's Puebla state, the state's public security ministry said. The victims, 6 men, 3 women, and a child, were targeted by armed individuals in the municipality of Tezingo, the state ministry said. State and federal forces launched a joint investigation and operational deployment to find the perpetrators. The state's public security ministry pledged zero impunity for the killings. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli strikes killed at least 8 Palestinians on Sunday in the Gaza Strip, health officials said, as ceasefire efforts meant to end fighting between Israel and Hamas militant group faltered. Separately, Gaza medics said another Israeli airstrike killed at least 3 people at a community kitchen near Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. In elections, Peru's top electoral authority pledged on Sunday to correct flaws that delayed April's first-round election results by a month ahead of the presidential runoff scheduled for June 7th. The finalists for the presidency are right-wing candidate Keiko Fujimori and leftist Roberto Sanchez. In Taipei, Taiwan will not be sacrificed or traded and will not give up its free way of life under pressure, President Lai Ching-te wrote in a social media Sunday, adding that U.S. arms sales to the island were a security commitment based on law. Lai's comments were his first response to last week's summit between President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. In Idaho, 4 crew members involved in a mid-air collision on military jets in an air show ejected safely yesterday outside Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. 2 EA-18G Growler jets collided in mid-air 2 miles from the base during the Gunfighter Skies air show, a spokesman reported. From Havana, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez accused the U.S. on Sunday of fabricating a fraudulent case to justify economic sanctions and potential military intervention. The minister's comments followed a report by Axios on Sunday that said Cuba had acquired more than 300 military drones. And from the White House, China committed to purchasing at least $17 billion in U.S. agricultural products in 2026, 27, and 28, the White House said in a fact sheet that was released yesterday. The commitment was made during the meetings between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping last week. The $17 billion figure does not include the soybean purchase commitments that China made in October of 2025, the White House said. And coming from the Congo and Uganda, an Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda was declared a public health emergency of international concern by the World Health Organization after 80 suspected deaths. The World Health Organization said the outbreak caused by the Bundibugyo virus does not meet the criteria of a pandemic emergency, but that countries sharing land borders are at risk of further spread. On Sunday, the UN Health Agency said in a statement that 80 suspected deaths, 8 laboratory-confirmed cases, and 246 suspected cases were reported as of Saturday. One case was confirmed in the eastern Congolese city of Goma, a statement by M23 rebels said.
Well, Ted, I'm going to close out with a couple quotes here. I looked for something that would be appropriate for tonight's Sabres game, and the first one comes from Billie Jean King, the tennis great, who said, "Pressure is a privilege," and certainly the pressure is on tonight. But the second quote comes from Herb Brooks, who we'll recall was the coach of the 1980 U.S. Olympic gold medal hockey team, and he said, "Great moments are born from great opportunity." And tonight the Sabres have great opportunity, so we'll hope for some great moments in there.
Opportunity is knocking.
Yes, it is. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News from Monday, May 18th. We read from the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ted Pajacki
and Ed Howard. Thank you for listening, and today more than ever, go Sabres!
Go Sabres!
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Magazine. Following that at noon is the USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,